Hey everyone, Joe Cronin from Patriot Real Estate here, and I'm going to teach you about how you can search for a mortgage using the Mass Registry of Deeds website. So, just as a way of introduction, I want to just sort of educate you on what a mortgage is exactly. A mortgage simply is a security interest that operates to secure a promise to repay a loan, and that's usually in the form of what's called a promissory note. So a mortgage contract is really just a conveyance of a lien, and that lien serves as collateral for the underlying loan or your promise to repay on that property. So getting back to the steps that we're going to look at today, we're starting here on the Mass Land Records website, and you'll see the map of the Commonwealth, and it's broken out into 21 different registry districts, and those districts will house different cities and towns throughout the state, and you may not be sure exactly where the property that you're interested about resides. That's why it's helpful when you are looking and doing your own research to reference this map. That may not answer all your questions, but that can be a great starting point. In our case, the property that we're looking at happens to reside in North Essex. And as I mentioned in the How to Search for Deeds lesson, there's two ways for you to get started. You can click on this different drop-down list and choose the option that you are looking for, or you can click right on the map itself. And we're going to click on the map today. So once this page opens up, the next step is to click on the search by name or address. And once this page loads, what you're going to do next is you're going to click on the address partial. And just as a side note, I'm going to show you two different ways for you to search, but the first one I'm going to do is by address. And so here, if you know that the mortgage is going to be on a property at the address, you can search this way. And as I type in the street address, I just want to make a note to you that it's important not to spell out the full word street, because if you do that, oftentimes what we see is your results aren't going to yield what you're looking for. That limits it because the registry doesn't always spell out the full name. So for that purpose, when you search for records based on that typing, you may limit the result set that's going to produce. So if you leave it as ST, it's going to be more open, and in our case, that should produce what we're looking for. So we're putting in the town. Next, we're going to put in the document type. This is a pretty expansive list, but we know what we're looking for, which is the mortgage. So we're going to choose that option, and we're not going to worry about the date range. However, you could certainly do that if you know the date range that applies. So next, we're going to hit search records, and that should produce our results. And it did, and we see that this produced the results that we were expecting. Before we go forward though, I'm going to go back and show you another way to do this search. So the search we just conducted was based on the address. However, if we had the book and page for the specific document, which I happen to have, you can also search this way. And the reason you might want to do this is because when you're searching based on address, that's going to pull up results that show all the different mortgages that may have applied to that property at one time or another. Now, that's probably not what you're looking for. However, if you wanted to see all the mortgages that existed and applied to that property at any point in time, that's certainly a way to find that. However, if you want to limit the scope of your search, this is a great way to point your search at a specific document. So if you know the book and page, you can enter it here, and so that's what I'm going to do, and we're going to define our search based on that criteria. And you're simply putting in the book and page, and as we see, that pulled up the proper information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of walk you through what you see on screen here. So at the top we see our book and page, so that's what we use to search. We see the recording timestamp, so it was March 7th, 2012 at 3:48 p.m. We see that the document contains 20 pages. It's the mortgage is the type of document. The mortgage amount is for this. So we're going to see all this in the document itself, but it's for the town of North Andover at this street address. We see the grantor and the grantee, and we'll talk about that. And we also see the office where this was performed at. So we're going to go back up and we're going to actually take a look at the document itself. So in order to do that, we're going to click on this book icon, and that's going to pull up a new screen. And once this populates, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the View Image All page. You could specify which page you want to see, but I find this to be the easiest way to see the full document. And what's nice is this produces in a PDF format, so you could certainly save this down and keep a copy for your records if it's something that you think will be important to have. So we're going to take a look at what we have in this document, especially for those that aren't familiar with what a mortgage contains. We're going to give a very high-level view of what you're going to see. As we mentioned before, you have your recording information, so you have this book and page, you have the date, the timestamp. We have the actual lender that was lending on this loan, which is Stoneham Bank. We have the property address, so that's all pretty self-explanatory. As we're scrolling down, we see that this mortgage is that of a VA loan or a Veteran Affairs loan. So that's a special type of loan that's available to military members and their families, and we'll cover that at a later time. But I just wanted to point that out in case it wasn't obvious. Also, this talks about the fact that the loan, as a result of it being a VA loan, is not assumable without the approval of the Department of Veteran Affairs. So that's important, is to think about the terms of the document. We'll talk a little more about the terms, but it's important to look at this document and to understand the rules and limitations that the owner has. So right off the bat, we see there's a definition section. We see that the borrower name is here, it's listed, and something to keep in mind, because it's not totally intuitive as it pertains to mortgages, is that when you have a mortgage, the person giving it to the lender is actually the current owner or the borrower. And for that reason, they are called the mortgagor. And the bank or the lender is the one that is known as the mortgagee. So the mortgagee is actually receiving the mortgage. What that means is that the borrower is giving the mortgage. It's giving that security interest as collateral for the loan, for your promissory note, for that promise to repay. This is often confused. A lot of times people think that the loan is the mortgage. But so that can be a little bit confusing, but it's just important to point out that who the parties are as you see these different titles referenced throughout the document. So we scroll down, we see the lender is Stoneham Bank. We see that it talks about the promissory note that this is in reference to. It talks about the riders, the specific riders that pertain to this. We see all the different terms that are important. Something else to point out when we're looking at this is that it's a MERS mortgage, so the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, and that's a separate corporation that acts solely as a nominee for the lender. So the lender in this case was Stoneham Bank, but MERS is a separate corporation that acts solely as a nominee. So what they are is they're actually going to be the party that is referenced as the mortgagee in this particular contract. So they're taking over as that representative under this contract. So that can be a little confusing, but I did want to point out that, so in case you were curious about what that meant. And those are the basic, fundamental things that I wanted to cover at this point in time.